Peace Museum joining me this morning. How's it going, Heather?
Oh, good. You?
I'm doing very well. Thank you very much. Now, you guys have these wonderful cemetery tours that you've been hosting for quite some time now, and there's still three or four events I think I saw coming up through the summer. So, for people who've never heard exactly, what these tours are about, tell us a bit about what they are and kind of what we can learn from them.
So it's kind of like a guided tour of the cemetery. We pick out about 10 to 20 people and talk about their life stories. So it's not a scary ghost tour,
Yeah.
but it's an opportunity to learn more about people who helped to shape our community. There are funny stories in there because I like funny stories. There are obviously sad stories as well, as all these people are deceased now, and some in more tragic ways than others. It's a great way to get to know more about Fort St. John's history and to maybe relate to some of the people or the challenges that they faced.
And I think there's three different cemeteries that you visit. Is that all the kind of cemeteries in Fort St. John that you go to?
There are two cemeteries
Two.
and three tours.
Gotcha. I see.
So at the main cemetery on 100th Avenue, we offer what we call the original tour, which talks about how the cemetery came to be and about some of the notable people buried there. And then we have an Alaska Highway cemetery tour that also takes place there that talks about different people and their connection to the Alaska Highway, from guiding to business to operating lodges and so on. And then our newest tour, which launched last year, is our Woodlawn Cemetery tour. So that's up by the golf course and looks at a fair amount of notable people buried there.
Now, what's kind of the range of the people you talk about here? Because Fort St. John's been around quite some time now. Are there some people who passed away early 20th century and even before that you're able to talk about and talk a bit about history about?
So our cemetery, like by the Roman Catholic Church, the main cemetery starts in the 30s.
I see.
So nobody, although lots of people buried there go back into the 1800s, we don't go, or we're unable to go back to people who died back then.
I see. And if you can, without giving it away too much, I guess, if you can, a sampling of sort of one of these stories we might hear from one of the early people who lived in Fort St. John.
Sure. So one of my favorite stories that we'll be talking about on Friday night, this Friday night at 7 in our original cemetery tour, is that of Dominic Chili. So he came over from Italy and he lived in Saskatchewan, and he met a farmer in Saskatchewan who said, "Oh, I have a farm back in the Peace River country. Why don't we exchange farms?" And so Dominic came over with his son. They walked all the way from Saskatchewan, which is pretty unbelievable.
So,
Slid down.
sorry to interrupt you, Heather. I have two questions. So they just swapped farms, first of all, and then he
They just
walked here from Saskatchewan.
he walked here with his son Steve, and they slid down the Beaten River Hill. Well, it wasn't the Beaten River then,
Yeah.
but and then arrived in Fort St. John only to find out that they'd been swindled.
Oh
It
no.
was The guy had never had a farm here, and they were in big trouble. They didn't have anything left, and the community really rallies around them. So that's one of my favorites.
Wow. Walked here and found out, no, there's actually nothing here for you. Oh, man. That's a rough story. Okay. Well, you've kind of mentioned it already then. The next edition of this is happening this Friday night, correct?
Yeah, so that's the original cemetery tour at the main cemetery on 100th Avenue. You can park in the parking lot by the Roman Catholic Church, and tickets are $10 at the gate.
Okay. So you just bring some cash with you, pay right then and there. And then how long does the tour last usually, Heather?
About an hour, maybe a little more. Depends if you go with me or if Larry Evans, who's our other tour guide, adds a few more stories in.
As I say, I imagine Larry has a little more extended edition of the tour. Okay, you don't have to register ahead of time or anything. You can just kind of
Nope.
show up.
Just show up. It goes rain or shine unless it's absolutely pouring,
Yeah.
but weather's looking pretty decent.
Awesome. Well, if you want to find out more about this, you can see the list of all three of the tours, because there's another one late July and another one in August, if I remember right. You can head over to fsjmuseum.com for more info on that, or follow the museum on Facebook. Before we let you go, Heather, anything else you want to say today?
Yeah, our next big event after the cemetery tour is our pie sale at Rotary Rib Fest. So stop by the museum booth and get a slice of pie for $5, or coffee is by donation. And that's really going to help the North Peace Historical Society operate the Fort St. John North Peace Museum.
Wonderful. So when you're filled up with ribs, make sure you've got that second stomach for dessert. You guys will be kind of set up in front of the museum there, or you can have a booth closer to the...
It'll be in Centennial Park, but in front of the museum. Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. All right, Heather. Well, it's always a pleasure to talk to you. Thanks again for doing this.
And thank you, Dub.
This community interview is supported by your Member of Parliament, Bob Zimmer. Stop by his office in Fort St. John at 9916 100th Avenue and in Dawson Creek at 10420.